Portland now can...
Here is a reminder of what the air attack warning sounds like. This is the sound.
In the 1980s, the world was faced with an energy crisis of such unprecedented magnitude and scale that it devastated nations. Rolling blackouts, fuel shortages, and civil unrest swept through the streets of every major metropolitan city. Faced with such a calamity, it seemed as though the world would devolve into pure anarchy if it weren't for a ray of hope emanating from the east. Tasked with the impossible, the Japanese government pooled its few remaining resources together in search for a new energy source. Digging deep into the Earth's core, researchers discovered a new superfuel, Freon, a gaseous substance with enough energy output to make both fossil fuel and nuclear reactors obsolete. A world once hanging by a thread was now united as one. This plentiful and powerful fuel resource allowed not only the world to rebuild, but to prosper, thrive, and reach for the stars. However, peace in our time wouldn't last long, as the brilliant blue planet Earth would be soon shrouded in a deep, dark shadow, a shadow cast by the Waruda Empire. The insectoid Warudas have an insatiable lust for energy, devastating star systems, and their eternal hunger. These cosmic horrors have now set their sight on Earth and its Freon supply. To combat these invaders, the armies of Earth have united as the Diaclone Corps, brave mecha pilots who put their lives on the line to defend our planet. Yet this battle has become a war of attrition as the Warudas have sunk their claws deep into our cities. To rescue civilians in tight urban environments, the Diaclone Corps have expanded beyond their titanic battle mecha with a new division, the Car Robot Team. These car robots are specialized mecha that can convert from high-performance vehicles to rescue and urban combat mecha. The first of these car robots created was the dynamic Super Tuning Countach, a bright red beacon of hope that combines the performance of Lamborghini with the military ingenuity of the Diaclone Corps. The Super Tuning Countach is the first in what will be the new wave of mecha that turned the tide against the Waruda threat. Charging through the smoke-filled city streets, we have Diaclone 1, LP500 Super Tuning Countach Robo, colloquially known as Red Sunstreaker, the first volley of the car robot's battle against the Waruda threat. And if you want to do your part, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications because here at PDX Toy Collective, the only good bug is a dead bug. This figure was released exclusively in Japanese markets all the way back in 1982, and as the name implies, it is the first release in the car robot subline of Diaclone. I said in my previous Diaclone video, Battle Convoy was the face to launch 1,000 ships. He was the figure that inspired Hasbro to import this series as the Transformers, and while Convoy is still extremely important, we wouldn't have him without Diaclone 1. I guess in some respects it's like Paris's choice, you know, but instead of Aphrodite and Hera, he's choosing between two robots that turn into cars. Kind of losing that analogy there, but you get the point. It's a Greek myth for the modern age, Diaclone. And in some respects, this is the toy that proved the concept of a Transformer, a toy that transformed from vehicle to robot and back again, as this toy was massively popular in the Japanese toy market. And that all begins with his alternate mode. Diaclone 1 takes the alternate form of a Lamborghini Countach, one of the most iconic vehicles of the New Wave era and one of the most popular sports cars ever produced. We have a bold, rich, deep red Countach with black detail work and a modified exposed engine. Now, this isn't a detail present on any real-world example of a Countach. It was designed specifically for the Diaclone figure to give the vehicle mode a much more powerful appearance. Despite the fact that it's well over 4 decades old, the Countach still has a futuristic quality to it, with the sharp lines and geometric shaping that still makes it stand out to this day. In some ways, the Countach feels anachronistic in its own time, so much so that it makes the perfect basis for a real robot-style mecha. You can actually modify the alternate mode just a little bit more by adding these red plastic booster rockets to the rear. While they are fun, they don't really add a huge amount besides looking like extra tech detail and greebling. It would have really helped if they were chrome, just like the exposed engine. Now, the real-world Countach was designed by Marcello Candini, a name that'll be familiar to fans of the channel as he was the designer of the Lancia Stratos, the supercar that pioneered the iconic Italian wedge shape. The Lancia Stratos would then go on to be the basis for two Diaclone mecha, the first of which would be imported into the Transformers as the affable Autobot scientist Wheeljack, and the second would become the Decepticons' enigmatic espionage specialist Exhaust. And it seems as though Takara's always had an affinity for Lamborghini and specifically the Countach, as 5 years prior in 1977, Takara's Microman toy line featured the Cosmo Countach, a vehicle scaled for the 3 3/4-inch Microman toys that transformed from a Lamborghini into what could be best described as a car centaur. A cent car, if you will. As janky as it looks by modern standards, Cosmo Countach is essentially the progenitor of the Transformers, not even the missing link. This is the primordial ooze of the entire toy line. Without him, there would be nothing. No microchange, no Diaclone, no Skybound, no IDW, no Sunbow, nothing. So always remember, on Transformers Day, give thanks to Cosmo Countach by setting out a cappuccino as well as a little biscotti or a cannolo. Now there is one last feature on Diaclone 1, and that's the fact he can seat one pilot. The real-world Countach had scissor doors, but here on Diaclone 1, you just lift up the entire roof of the car. With the cockpit hatch open, you can appreciate all of the tech detailing and stickers on display. This center section here is much more of a command console than a driver's seat, and you can fit the included Dionaut or other small-scale figures inside. This little console area is essentially the central component of Diaclone 1, and all of the alt mode and by extension the robot mode is built around it. With a quick and intuitive transformation, Diaclone 1 converts from Countach Interceptor to Dynamic Mecha, and you know what? This is the ideal Transformers body. You might not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. One of the things I really appreciate about this figure is the fact that every single piece of engineering, every detail, every movement is there to accomplish one singular goal. The designer set out with one simple idea. What if a sports car stood up and turned into a combat robot? And you know what? They knocked it out of the park on the first try. It would only improve upon that with each subsequent Diaclone figure. Up until the late 70s, most Japanese robots were super robots, like Mazinger, Grendizer, Getter Robo, anything going to Gaidru. And even though these were piloted mecha, they really operated more like superheroes that just happened to be robots. They'd have superpowers, super strength, obviously, and sometimes fantastical and magical origins. Raydeen, for example, was an ancient Egyptian super robot that goes on adventures and rights wrongs. By the late 70s, a lot of mangaka were starting to reject the conventional ideas of the super robot genre, and instead began their own, that being the real robot movement. The real robots were grounded in real-world militaria, as well as the industrial aesthetic found on machinery and vehicles, and a focus on grounded mechanics. We see this in series like Gundam, Votoms, Dougram, and Super Dimension Fortress Macross. Diaclone is a natural extension of that aesthetic. Whereas something like Macross, for example, featured robots inspired by military aircraft, Diaclone was influenced by designer cars, with a few aircraft in there. We can't forget about good old Jet Robo. One of my favorite design elements on Diaclone 1 is the head sculpt. This almost Art Deco looking face accented by piercing yellow eyes and yellow horns. I've always loved the yellow eyes of the Diaclone figures and by extension the early Transformers. It really contrasts well with the silver paint used on the portraits. And those horns are just so cool. It gives them just that extra little bit of flair that makes them distinct when looking at the other robots. I'm also just a sucker for head ornamentation like that. Obviously I think Wheeljack looks really cool, and by extension Steel Jeeg. And then Celine or Sorine from Devilman just looks super cool with her giant head wings. So if you put a big headdress on a character, male, female, robot, demon, whatever, I'm gonna like it. Now for accessories, Diaclone 1 includes missile-launching fists.
Which was the style at the time.
And these are on really powerful springs, so I can kind of see why they were neutered for the Transformers to comply with US safety standards. He also has some not-so-choking hazard missiles which can replace these fists. They're awesome silver chrome, and they just look really sharp and eye-catching. Plus, you can give him the half-and-half look, which is very reminiscent of Trailbreaker and Hoist. You can also replace those missiles and the fists with the red turbo boosters from vehicle mode, which look a little weird admittedly. They look way better mounted on his shoulders like little epaulettes. No wonder Sunstreaker's a bit of a dandy in G1. And speaking of, there are a few oddities with this toy that carry over from Diaclone to Generation 1 Transformers. Now, considering Diaclone had 2 different Countach robos, it's been speculated, if not completely confirmed, that Hasbro's creators actually mixed these 2 up when they were creating the Autobots Sunstreaker and his brother Sideswipe. See, the original Diaclone 1, Sunstreaker for simplicity's sake, was only released in 2 colorways back in the day. There was the red, as we see here, and then the black and white police interceptor version. Diaclone number 15, New Countach Robo, was released in 4 different colorways in the Japanese market. There was the red version that would go on to become Sideswipe, there was the yellow version, a familiar police interceptor type, and then a very hard to find black deco. So already we've got a lot of Countaches to deal with. It's not until you take a look at the character bios that the mix-up becomes way more apparent. Marvel Comics writer Bob Budiansky drafted out all the bios for the early years of the Transformers, but what we saw on the back of the package was actually a truncated version of what he wrote. You wouldn't actually be able to read the full version until you cracked open the pages of the Marvel Comics Transformers Universe miniseries. These extended bios have a few details that really support the idea that the brothers were mixed up in production. Sunstreaker's full bio states that he has a shoulder-mounted missile launcher, which is not present on the original toy, as well as the fact that he has a contempt for Sideswipe's rear-mounted engine, which turns into a jetpack, an exposed engine that would only be found on Diaclone 1 and, by extension, the original Sunstreaker toy. Sideswipe's bio not only mentions the rear-mounted engine that converts into a jetpack, but it also makes note of shoulder-mounted flares that launch from both shoulders, as well as the fact that his arms convert into pile drivers. All told, all of these details really sound like Diaclone 1. So it stands to reason the original Sideswipe toy was going to be Diaclone 1, and the original Sunstreaker toy was going to be Diaclone 15. Whether or not they were going to have these names doesn't really matter, but it seems like the original intention for the Transformers line was to have the red Diaclone 1 come over, as well as the yellow Diaclone 15. It's just an interesting vestigial element from the original creative process that carries over to this day. And another interesting oddity that carries over from Diaclone to G1 is the sticker placement on Sunstreaker. See, the original Diaclone 1 has these red stickers that overlay the black plastic on his shoulders. The reason for this is so that it looks like he has a cohesive red alternate mode. However, when he was brought over to the Transformers as Sunstreaker and redecoed yellow at the last minute, they never changed the stickers. So he will always have these really cool shots of red on his shoulders that break up the cohesion of the yellow alternate mode. I like it a lot. It adds a little bit of charisma to Sunstreaker and just that little unique element to him that really gives him some flair. And flair really is Diaclone 1. This is the genesis point. This is the start of the Transformers. Like I said, Optimus Prime, Convoy, that might be the face that launched 1,000 ships, but you wouldn't have that without Diaclone 1. As a toy, it's immediately captivating. You have an iconic, stylish alternate mode decoed in a burning red with a real robot mecha hiding within it. As a piece of history, it is absolutely integral to the entirety of Transformers. This is where it all starts. It juxtaposes the familiar yellow Sunstreaker and just screams pre-Transformers. This is, in my opinion, the most iconic Diaclone toy. And I'm glad that over the years, knowledge of Diaclone and Microchange, the pre-Transformers era, has become more and more common. Fans are able to learn all about what came before, and because of that, Red Sunstreaker, or Diaclone 1, has gotten the respect that he deserves. He is an icon.